I'm Brandon,
And I'm Brandon.
and welcome back to Apollo City Comics. Now it's just the summer of interviews. I'm not even going to call it the comic book commentary show anymore. This is just a waste of time. Today we have a very special guest, and I'm super hyped to have him on. Our Instagram outreach has just grown so much, and we've met so many cool people. And this guy just had to have on, and I just really wanted to share his entire journey because it's super interesting. But the owner of Coffee and a Comic. Thank you, sir. Welcome on. Tell everyone a little about your shop, about what you do.
Well, brilliant. Well, thanks for having me on, Brandon. Brandon Brown. I appreciate it. And yeah, you're right. The Instagram community definitely has grown in the community of comics a lot since I've dabbled in it. And it's amazing to meet people like you. So again, thank you for having me here. So I own Coffee and a Comic, and that journey is an interesting one, how it got started. I go by, most people know me as a nom de plume of Frank Castle, because Punisher is my dude. That's kind of like my little pseudonym of sorts, kind of finding your own little niche in the comic world of Clark Kent and Superman kind of thing. So it's a great place to be. But yeah, that's kind of who I am and what I do. I have a coffee and a comic every morning, and I post about it every morning, essentially. And I have a website, coffeeandcomic.com. That's kind of the shtick.
And your website, it went up in the past few months, and it's one of the coolest things because your mug is one of my go-to mugs. And I'll definitely post a link onto there. And now your new mugs, they change with your temperatures too, right?
Oh, yeah. So they're magic mugs. So when you fill it up with hot liquid like coffee, it starts showing the actual design and logo and pictures inside of it. And yeah.
And where did you get the whole idea to start a business and get things going and just turn this into your life?
Okay, I'm going to do a little 10-second little spill on that because it's a long story, and then we're here generally going to be talking about grading. So I'll quickly. I've always been into business my entire life since I was a kid. Always wanted to start a skateboard company. As a matter of fact, when I was really young and skated, I've been skating my entire life. So business has always been in my background. The Coffee and a Comic situation occurred a couple years ago when I was helping a buddy of mine who owned a comic book shop, and I used to go in and help him run his shop a little bit and help out and dabble with that. And I've always loved comics, always been a part of the community, always been around since I was a little kid. So that just tuned in a lot to me, and I found some peace of mind during certain times of my life with his shop. He had to close his shop down, and he ended up moving with his lady and his newborn child back east to the Midwest and to start a new life and a new chapter. So it was unfortunate we had to shut down that shop, but I continued something that I started with his shop of doing a coffee and a comic with his shop and with his stuff. And that just started getting me into the Instagram world. Now, really quick too, my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer back in December of this last year.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Appreciate that. She's doing well. She's doing awesome. She's still fighting. We're still, obviously, as a family, concerned, but we're always positive.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went back to see her early January and going through all that, obviously certain things, the mortality counter, you start reflecting a little bit more on life and what you're doing and what you want to do and the things that really make you happy and what you want to do. And when I came back to California after seeing her, I really started doing the whole coffee and a comic thing. Like I'd start running to the beach. I wanted to change my lifestyle a little bit more, get a little bit more active, get healthier, do things, keep me going to help motivate her and, connect that. But one of the things I would do was take a comic down to the beach or down to wherever I was running and enjoying it, grab a cup of coffee and take that 15, 20 minutes just to zen out, to just disconnect from the world and just enjoy my comic and get into a whole other world. And that's a completely different story. And then that started a little bit more of the Instagram community that started popping in. They started reaching out to me and they liked what I was posting. And, I was able to, and then that just kind of launched to the idea of, let me just start a comic book shop. That was really kind of what set it apart. That's what I want to do with my life now. That's kind of, I figured out what it is I want to be when I grow up, and it's an owner of a comic book shop.
That's awesome.
So that's where the journey's been, and it's been tough, and it's rough, and it's financially difficult, but it'll happen. That's all I can say. That's why I love doing it.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, it's one of those things you you trip, you fall, you just got to get back up and keep running with it. And it sounds like you've done that quite a few times. And that's how you learn lessons and like push through. And like you said, really discover what you want to do in life and discover what's, truly meaningful at that point. And you very much like Brandon and I, comic books have saved us all in some point in our lives, you know, and it's always been kind of like your grounding force that when stuff goes bad, for some reason, you just happen to pick up the right issue and you're just like, damn, I can do this and I can get through this. And now I have like the ability and courage and like mentality to do it. And it's crazy how, such an awesome medium can do that to us. Some people it's movies, some people it's music, but for many of us, it's a badass comic book, just kicks ass.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the funny thing. We were talking about music a little earlier. Music is a big thing for me. Mm-hmm. Skateboarding and comics. Music, skateboarding, comics. 3 things in my life that have been consistent that have got me through everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, next to family and friends, obviously. But those things, like, there's that release, there's that escape, there's the amazing elements to it. Like Rocky Balboa, he gets beat down and gets right back up. Doesn't matter what happens. In comics, it shows you that time and time again. Like, that's why I love the Punisher so much. I don't know how many people like really read the Punisher, but he has no superpowers and he gets beat up a lot.
Yeah,
but he still pushes through. So it's great.
And the Punisher, I went such a huge Punisher phase. I even have, I don't know if it's the Marvel Max. I think the Night series was short, but I think the Max one was a super long one. I literally have a long box of Punisher stuff, and it was one of those things. Once I started reading it, you're just like, oh, it isn't all just like blood and guts and all this stuff. Like, there's some cool stuff going on here, and I could see why the character has been around for so long. Are you a big fan of Punisher, Brandon? I don't think we've ever discussed the Punisher itself.
I read a few random runs, and to me, Punisher was one of those books that was always just like fun to read at times, especially when like they go, like, I think I read a really random run of Becky Cloonan Punisher.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one panel specifically where he's riding a motorcycle and he's spinning he's basically ghostwriting it, like Ghost Rider style. He's got like a chain in one hand, like a shotgun in the other, and he's like, I think he like shoots some guy's head off or something. And I was like, you know what? Like, I can't get mad at this panel. I was like, this is kind of like the fun of comics in a way, and like the ridiculous. I know we're talking about how it's not always blood and guts with Punisher, but that time it was.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. The majority of the time it is, but it's like it has those moments. There's some grounding moments.
And then Steve Dillon was still drawing it before he died, actually.
Yeah.
When Becky Cloonan was writing it, and so I did read that run for a while, and it was fun, and I remember enjoying it a lot, and I remember reading that issue and just going like, man, this shit is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element to the Punisher real quick that some people don't get, because we talked about blood and guts. It has all that. And most people kind of know the element about, oh, his family died and that's why he kind of went crazy. Mm-hmm. But the psychology of the Punisher is what intrigues me the most. Like it's like there's an element to it that you find in these books, like even the newest one that Enos worked on a couple years ago when he came back to it for Punisher Soviet for the 6
I've heard a lot about that
little miniseries. Like it's crazy because he meets up with this dude from Russia and a Russia Special Forces dude, and they team up because the Russian dude wants to get back at his previous commanding general. Mm-hmm. And when you just quickly read it, it's just blood, guts, kill things and go on. But when you actually dissect it and realize, dude, this guy went through some crazy traumatic stuff in the Afghan war. Some of the things that like they have to deal with, and where's their psyche now? And I think that's something that we forget to dissect, is the psychology behind these, characters in comic books. That's why some of these books that have spawned up, like I think I saw one in Barnes & Noble the other day that was like Spider-Man, the psychology of Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's actual like psychologists out there writing books now to dissect and tear apart like comic book characters and like what is their, issues, like if they had to go see a therapist or something.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But Punisher's right in line with that. It's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, he's like, to agree with what you're saying, he's the perfect example of like, there's layers to those characters. There's a lot of depth and like there's a lot of psychology to study, basically.
Yeah.
Like
that
there's already like
aspect and all that type of stuff. And
there's already novels about like Batman psychology and stuff like that.
I think the Punisher, we were going to do movie commentaries on the 2 films soon, the Thomas Jane one and
Warzone.
3 films then you got to do
the 90s one or the 80s one.
Yeah, you got to do the Dolph Lundgren.
I've never seen that one. That's the one I haven't.
Oh god,
so got it.
So good.
That's what makes these commentaries so great. We get the worst like superhero films, and sometimes you're just like, you know what?
Dude, yeah.
I ain't half bad. But the video game. I don't know if you ever played the video game.
Oh, dude, that game, the one that's based off the Thomas Jane movie.
The video game was better than the movie.
Yes. Yes.
And they still include that one fight from the movie. What's that character's name?
Russian.
Yeah, that's literally what it's called, right?
Yeah, the Russian.
And it's like a cinematic boss fight, but it's basically the scene from the movie just extended for like 5 minutes.
And that was all Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Like it was all from one of their miniseries. And when I found out I had that run, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I love how it translates to stuff like that.
Yeah. But has Marvel published any Punisher stuff recently? Because I know they were kind of like staying away from it.
Well, the Soviet was the last one that they did, and that was like 2020, I think it was when it came out.
Because he got so controversial on how.
No, 2019. Yeah, and that controversy, man, I don't like to get into a lot of that myself, but to me, it's crazy. I mean, okay, I'm gonna go on record and say this because Punisher's my dude, and I hate it like when people associate certain things in our society and then demonize it, because my thing is when you're associating the Punisher logo with certain things in our society, you really have to think about that for a second. Like, so if you have a cop, for example, which, a cop is in our society to help serve and protect and do cop stuff. When he associates the symbol of the Punisher, then he has no idea what the Punisher is and who he is, because he's a vigilante. The Punisher's a criminal. Like, by all means said and done, he's a criminal within our community. Yeah, he's killing bad guys, rapists, and all that kind of stuff. But
it's not with justice.
It's not. It really isn't. like, so when you see individuals doing like the Punisher symbol with the Blue Lives Matter flag and all that, it shouldn't be connected, in my opinion. That's the reality of it. And so there shouldn't be a controversy over it, and people shouldn't be doing that in, because nobody wants a cop to be like the Punisher at all, or anybody to be because he's taking the law into his own hand. So
if you're a sane person, you shouldn't. It's one of those.
When that was all like when that was all happening, I remember a lot of memes. I know it's really like, I mean, memes always like reflect what's going on currently.
Yeah.
But there was like tons of memes and like screenshots of people like saying like all these people obviously don't understand the character, like
they look at a symbol and the new association with that symbol.
Yeah, and how people like
true one,
completely misread what the character was originally about, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I remember I was listening to an interview with Brian Bendis and Jerry Conway, the creator of The Punisher. And it was crazy because at those Black Lives Matters marches, on one side, you had people with the Punisher logo and Blue Lives Matter and all that. And on the other side, they had the Miles Morales symbol. So both of them talking were just like, it's crazy. We're seeing our symbols being used in public for protests, for all this type of stuff. But for some reason, they're against each other. And the way they're being associated, the Miles one is very understandable. But the way Conway's was, it was an act of anger and just like aggression and negativity, where you had Bendis's creation, which was hope and positivity and all this stuff. Like, it was just baffling to both of them, like how these comic book characters have evolved into our world and seeped in at this point.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think some of it stems from, on both sides, a little bit of ignorance based on these characters. They
Mhm.
maybe see a Netflix show, 1 or 2 episodes, and they think they know what the character is all about, and they embody it into their own personal attributes.
Mhm.
When like fans like us within the comic world that we actually follow, like I've read thousands of, well, not thousands, but pretty much everything Punisher, anything that Punisher's been in at this time almost. I don't think there's much that I haven't read with it. And having that intimate knowledge of him, he terrifies me as a human being.
Oh,
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Dude, yeah.
So he shouldn't be looked upon for anybody to prop up on a pedestal when it comes to things in our society that represent some kind of political agenda of any sort. Whether
Mhm.
you're Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, wherever you lie yourself in, just keep our comic book characters out of it.
Yeah.
Because you obviously don't know the truth behind where the writers and creators wanted them to go in the first place. And so you're doing a disservice to the comic community instead, essentially, not only your own community, in my opinion. So,
100% agree with you. Couldn't have said it better or exemplified it better. It's a brilliant point. It's true. Yeah, I've no objections to that at all. People misconstrue stuff, and they kind of, when it gets too mainstream, it just loses its true meaning. It's bizarre how that happens. And do
Yeah.
some research, man. Read a book. Literally, go read a book. Like, go read a comic
Right?
book in specific. But so regarding the Punisher, regarding comic book collections, I am someone that gets comic books graded, and I do it in a very different manner than you do. And even Brandon's opinions are very different from mine.
Yeah,
on
and
comic book
I am
books.
someone who literally never gets comic books graded.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I don't want to say I have a bigger collection than Brandon, but I have a good amount of fucking comic books you could fit into an apartment,
Mhm. That's literally like Brandon and I don't even have like a big dick competition like things. It's like, I don't know, man. My collection is way bigger than your collection. Let's debate this right now.
Oh, well, where I got the one up is I've read my collection, so you know
That's
what?
true. All right. Well, maybe mine's too big, and I can't. But recently, Frank and I've become connected because of the whole grading aspect, and that's when we got to do our first live video, which you can find on his Instagram page, where I randomly jumped on one afternoon, and as he was showing off books that he was considering grading, he was just trying to say, hey, CBCS or CGC, and I was like, I might have an opinion on this.
Meanwhile, I'm just in my room trying to get my Pokemon cards graded at PSA or whatever it's called.
Well, and there's a number of grading companies. I really only know of 3 of them. PGX, which is kind of, I would say, the lowest tier in terms of how popular.
In the top 3, PGX is definitely down at the bottom.
I'm gonna do a quick Google search.
There's CBCS, which is gaining a lot of traction lately, and that's where a lot of this conversation is going to go. And then there's CGC, kind of literally like the gods of grading. You know what I mean?
The behemoth.
The behemoth, the Marvel and the DC of grading, basically. And Brandon, did you pull up any other?
I am. Give me a second. I found one website, but.
Or Frank, did you look into any other companies that you're?
So there are a few others, and a lot of them, some do kind of grading, but from what I understand, a lot of them that try to do grading actually stepped away from the full-on official grades and just went to slabbing. So they'll do custom slabs for you. So there's a lot of people that will do custom slabs for you, which is cool because it helps preserve the book as well, and you don't have to go worry about the grading aspect of it either. So there's quite a few out there that do things.
All right.
In that
let's throw a couple names out there that I found. I know you guys named some, but maybe you can give us some of your experience with some of these companies. If I you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. If I've heard of it.
All right. So there's the big ones, like you guys said. There's CGC, CBCS, PGX, EGS.
EGS. I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
I said PSA, but I don't think they do comic books. I think they just literally do like collectible cards. And then I found another list that says Halo certification and 60-day comic grading and MCG Midwest comic grading, and then CBGC comic book grading company, and then European grading service. So that's just a few I got from just Googling for like 30 seconds. Any of those names stick out for you, or good or bad?
Two of them do. I don't know about the European one, but I think the other two that you mentioned right before the European one, those two, I could be wrong, but from my understanding, they didn't do slab.
Oh,
they would do raw grading, and like they would just do the raw grading and then seal the bag itself. CBCS now offers that as well, and so they would at least grade the book itself, but not slab it. Now they may have changed, but I know some of them just did the straight up raw grading of books to give you an idea. And it's definitely a less expensive way to go if you are trying to sell raw books and want a good grade to put out there, and or just for your general. But that, I don't know, they could have changed by now.
Sometimes when I have a few books I've gone from like Comic-Con and whatnot, and I had gradings in the back, and I always thought that was like an estimate or something, but I guess it could have been an official, like it is a 9.4 whatever, in Eternals, Miracle Man, whatever I have. But that's super cool. I guess if you're single issues, if you're just trying to put a grade out there just to show the condition and show that it's not like a 5.0 or a 3.0, and you're just like, yeah, it's a 9.6, like it'll push a better sale and give you a better estimate on that price.
And so there's something we have to think about in the grading world as well. Like, we do look to these big companies to grade our book, kind of, but we forget that, like, you just brought it up. Like, you go into a shop and you'll see something that says like a 9.6, near mint, whatever, and it's just written on there. Well, that was probably done by the shop owner. And the shop owner's probably been in business for 20 plus years and probably knows what he's doing when it comes to grading. So it's probably a more accurate grade than a lot of other grades out there, but we just don't have the certification from a giant $1 million company to prove it, And so that's the hard thing, because people can grade. Like, anybody can grab a book, and if they have the basic idea and knowledge of like how grading is done and what the standard is for it, can get a good estimate and a good grade on any book. So that's something we forget about too, is that we do have people that are grading their own books and are probably better than some of the people that CBCS or CGC might even hire.
Yeah, it's very true.
Have you ever actually seen the process? Like, I've always kind of seen it as like an office and just like a literal stack of books there, or maybe it's like an assembly line. I don't know. I literally don't do any of this. So
I've only seen the process in a couple different ways. I saw one time. I think it was CGC at a Comic-Con here in Anaheim, I believe it was, a handful of years ago, when they had a booth. And I just walked by, and they would take the books and then they would move over to this other desk area. And then somebody would seriously have like the stack, and they'd go through, and they'd be, most of them flipped open every page. They looked through it, searched the entire book, looked for spine ticks, whatever it was, and then would start making notes and jot it down as we go through it.
Okay.
Oh, you're lucky if you get notes.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
It's kind of funny, and I hate to make this comparison because I watch a lot of like Pokemon card unboxings and like a lot of Pokemon card gradings. Actually, I follow a couple of YouTubers that that's their thing. They unpack packs and get them graded and then talk about it. And with that, they actually sometimes send back a grid that shows what was wrong with your card after it's been graded. So for instance, say like you get your card back and it's like an 8.5, and you're like, well, why was it an 8.5? And then they break it down and they give you a small little cutout of like a card's like a very like stock image of one, and it'll be like, oh, there was a mark here, or like the edge was bent or whatever.
Right.
And they don't do that at all for comics. Like,
no, they do. So there's different services each company offers when it comes to grading notes, and other aspects. And it's supposed to be just known in the comic community. Like, if your book comes back in an 8.5 and it's like let's say it's a 1997 issue something or other, and it comes back like an 8.5, then you're supposed to know just in the comic community that it comes back to an 8.5. It's probably because it's got 1 or 2 spine tick. Maybe there's some waving in it, little things like that. We're already supposed to know that. And so for them, they feel like there's no need to break it all down. And if you really want to know, then there's guides out there that you can open up and read for yourself on what generally gives you that breakdown. Okay. And so it's kind of a unset thing. But yeah, you can get an opt-in for the grading notes and all that kind of stuff. And I think CBCS actually, they do give grading notes on everything.
Cool.
A few points. CGC, I know you have to pay extra for that service. So it's interesting.
Yeah, CGC, I've always asked for notes, and then I've gotten like a 9.246, and I never get like an explanation because where I can't visibly see a spine tick or any of that type of stuff, and I'm like, why isn't this a 9.8? Why isn't this like a little bit a bump higher? You know what I mean? And I've never gotten grading notes back. And that's something that's always kind of annoyed me. I feel like after a certain tier, like maybe even after like, even if it has a 9.6, like just let me know like where a spine tick was or what was wrong with it, To me, it's just more like comfort instead of just like, can I trust the grader who did this? You know what I mean? Sometimes it feels like that too.
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing. Like, for example, when Berserker got released and came out, I remember going into a local comic book shop and I was picking up a couple issues, and one of the associates or workers at the shop had mentioned to me, because I was getting a couple of them and I got them for myself for the most part. She was like, "Oh, well, just so you know, like we're hearing CGC is not giving these books a 9.8 or higher anymore." I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, "No, because they've done so many." And so in my head, I'm thinking, wait, that makes no sense, because if a book is a 9.8, it's a 9.8.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't get degraded just because they've graded 2 million of them at 9.8s already.
Yeah, it's so saturated. Saturate the market.
Right.
It's not their business.
So I guess they do it though. And so it's one of those weird things where it's like, because you gotta admit, like a brand new book that just hits market and gets sent to CGC, they're just like, oh, this just came out last week. So to make the process easier, 9.8 stamp 9.8, 9.8, 9.8. And that saves them a ton of time. But then it devalues the integrity of the company. So that's some of the issues I think is going on with CGC right now. They're having a lot of that kind of problem. That's like a school going, okay, even though like 100 kids got A's, that's too many kids passing with like perfect grades. We gotta fail some,
Yeah,
we got a curve. It's grading on the curve.
Yeah, it's so weird. That's and it's also funny if they're like, this book came out last week, perfect, and then it's like you open it, there's like a coffee ring in there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's super bizarre. Like grading. Well, how much, to me, the grade always kind of matters. Like to me, I do get picky because I do like that, like perfection, as much as I can. Even though not, it's not always the best, it's kind of especially with new books, I really would rather have a higher grade than anything. But how do you feel about grades? Like, does it affect your desire or need? Does it have any affliction? Like, what do you think about that?
Okay, so this goes into where I am currently in my life when it comes to grading, because I probably held both of your viewpoints on grades at one point in time. Now I think I hold all viewpoints, because now being a comic book shop owner, I have 3 factors. I'm a reader, number 1. And then I'm a shop owner, and then I'm a collector. So I need to find the balance in it all, because being a shop owner, well, yeah, some of my books I'm going to resell. So the grade does matter, because I need to make a profit to stay in business. And so, yeah, some of the books that get sent out, they need to come back with a high grade, hopefully, because people want that high grade, just like you were saying, Brandon, that you like your books in high mint grade. But at the same time, it doesn't matter either, because sometimes like certain books, like if it comes back as a low grade, like for me, for example, on the collector side, one of the grails that I really want is Spider-Man 129, first issue of Punisher, obviously. So, but can I afford a 9.8? No, I can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
At least not now in my life.
Very good point.
Dude, you know what? After the last 6 months, I had no idea.
I can.
Prices and everything have just been skyrocketing and going crazy.
Checking right now.
yeah, if you can check it right now, like what's an average on? I'm thinking somewhere in the 10 plus G's.
Oh,
But,
I was thinking 6,000. So that's probably shows how even far back behind I am at this point.
According to qualitycomics.com, I don't know if that's a trustworthy site. A 2.0 is 450, and then 4.0 600, 6 775, 8 is 1250. A 9.4, according to them, is $3,000 and some change, and then a record sale was just about $1 million.
Whoa,
that's weird.
See, I don't know if that's a trustworthy site, but this other site says 32,000.
See,
yeah, so like I knew in the 9/8 area that they're definitely over 10 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's
and
so
that's
yeah.
a book
So for
that's
me,
going to grow in value. That's another. It's an practically,
As soon as that Punisher series gets on Disney Plus,
right. But that's the funny thing is like, so at the same time, there's a market for low value grades as well. So like, I can afford the 2.0 ASM 129.
Mm-hmm.
A few $100, cool. I got that book now. I'm stoked. That will be the stepping stone for me to go up in grade, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like why, yes, grades matter to me 100% as a collector. Also, as a shop owner, they do. But I think it doesn't really matter what the grade comes back. It matters on who's collecting and what they're trying to achieve with that book in general. So I go, again, do I want a 10.0 ASM 129? 100% I do. And maybe someday I'll be able to find one and get it. I don't know.
That's a down payment on a house right there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But and everybody has their own different, like, it's like that dude that just got Action Comics for like 32 million a month or two ago.
Oh yeah.
Like,
God,
who is that dude who's got $32 million sitting around to buy a comic book?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Ghost Rider sold for what, 300,000 recently, and it's like that's a Bronze Age book that doesn't deserve that high of a sale.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, the same thing. My holy grail of like get graded collectible books, like a collectible book to get, is Hawkman #4.
Oh, okay.
First Santana, right?
Yeah, first appearance was Zatanna, and I was at Comic-Con, the famous Comic-Con I met Brandon at. I remember I held one in my hands and like not even graded alone. It was $400.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like an okay condition.
And you know what's crazy about the whole grading thing too is like, so I remember the buddy of mine that had a comic book shop out here. He had ASM 300, in raw form.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in good condition. It looked great, but we were trying to get him to get it graded, but we went back and forth with it because he could either sell it raw for around $350, or he could get it graded and run the risk that it actually comes back with a lower grade, which would reduce the book value to like 150, 200 because it now has that grade on. So it's a weird situation. Like, do you get the raw book at a certain price and then get it graded and then have it lose value? Or, so it's you never know.
Sometimes there's like no point behind it. Yeah.
It's difficult because, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I think the bottom line for grading for me, it really comes down to the preservation of certain books. Like I was telling Brandon when I had my little Instagram live a while back and showing the books that I was getting done, my very first comic book was Ren and Stimpy #4 that I personally bought myself. That was the first one. I went into a 7-Eleven, grabbed it on a little spinny wrap, picked it up, was like, I'm buying this with my own money. And I've had that since, I don't know, over 30 years now. The cover of it's falling off. It's bent. It's destroyed. But I sent it to get graded. And if they could give it a lower number than a 0.5, it would deserve it. You know what I mean? It's beat up. But I want it graded because it has sentimental reasoning for me, and I want to preserve that comic for as long as it can stay alive in a thing. Now, can I go get another Ren and Stimpy #4 somewhere else? Yeah, but it's not the original one I got from my 7-Eleven as a kid.
That's
so
dope.
I think that's an element to it, to where it's like,
I think that was
different. I did do it.
I think that was one of the things that really resonated with me during that conversation was that like just getting it done for sentimental value. It's not everything you get graded needs to be the book you're going to flip and sell and just save as an investment. Sometimes it's just I want this and it's this is now a mantelpiece. You know what I mean? This is something that's going to be there.
Yeah.
And then you got other books that are like hold on a second, let me pull this one out real quick. I know for those listening, they're not going to be able to see, but I've got the Punisher War Journal #6, guest starring Wolverine in my hand right here, right? It's a very well-known book. Everybody pretty much knows it. This one, I'm stuck. I'm really stuck in a situation where I want to preserve this book for posterity reasons going forward into the future. Mm-hmm. But it's hard because on the inside, it's signed by Jim Lee.
Oh yeah,
And so if it gets graded, go ahead.
I was gonna say like the interior art.
Yeah. So like see if I can squeeze it out of here real quick.
It's one of those things like grading, you could find Jack Kirby signatures in the first page at the very bottom. Yeah. I'm assuming that's where it's at, right? When you open it up, you'll see it right there at the bottom.
I imagine, yeah.
I have Daredevil books that are signed by Frank Miller. And when I opened them up, it tripped me out. I even have a Trident book, an old anthology
right there
by Grant Morrison. Yep.
And that could potentially
be so it's like, yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, if I get this thing graded, there could be a grading note, like, oh, yeah, interior signed by Jim Lee, but it doesn't give it, people can't open up and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, do I get that graded or not? So now I'm at that, so it's a very weird, it's now obviously one day I hope possibly it does get graded just to have it sealed, because this is paper. This is stuff that's one day not going to be around anymore.
And something can always happen.
More and more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I can spill coffee on it right now as I got it sitting next to my coffee cup.
It's one of those things that's like where you're going to take a photo of the signature and then get it graded and have the photo next to it and everything.
Okay, there's a cool thing that CBCS does. I'm not sure if CGC does this, but for an extra, it's like $150 service though.
No.
CBCS will actually take photos of every single page in the comic and then give you a file of it.
Oh, wow.
And so it'll be attached with, correlated with your number and everything. So it will be documented and it will show the entire comic so you can still read it and whatever in digital form. So,
that's interesting. I do not think CGC does that.
For $150?
Yeah, I think it's about 150 or more depending on certain situations. So obviously if you have a really brittle book, they might actually charge more just for the insurance than throwing the book. But yeah.
I guess that'd be really good for a really obscure or rare book that you just want to preserve. But if you're getting a very commonly, if you could find a True Believers copy of that Marvel book, then just buy the $1 True Believers version and have that with it. You know what I mean? But that's kind of interesting. The signatures,
or if you got it signed inside too, so it shows the signature.
Signatures are another thing. Like I primarily, if I get my books graded, it's because I get them signed, and I go to Comic-Con, and that's where I've always kind of thrived off of like ninja hallwaying it, trying to get people outside of walking out of panels and just like going to the convention, meeting all like the writers and artists. Because me myself, just being a fan, I would love to meet them. I would love that. I love that rock and roll signature type of feel of getting the memorabilia signed. And that's my primary reason for getting stuff graded. And sketches, like I have a Mark Bagley Venom and Carnage sketch that I got done at a Comic-Con in Arizona or something. And that's like to preserve the signature with the book and to preserve that artwork, because that's like my primary reason to get stuff is sketches. Sketches are my thing. I love getting that, and it's a cool way to get comic book art, on a book. Comic book art.
That's super cool.
Does do personalized signatures degrade a book if you were to get it graded?
It's funny that there's been the debate in the industry for a long time about that, because the book itself, like let's say you just had a blank book and it's a 9.8 book, right?
Mhm.
And then you go up and you just sign your name on it. That degrades the value of that book. So let's say that book is worth $100. Well, now it's only worth $60 because you actually messed up the book itself. But now you've taken the cost of the person's signature. So if it's me, my signature is obviously not worth anything. So I degraded that value of that book.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's Stan Lee, well, Stan Lee's signature, let's say, is already going for $100. So it may have degraded the book by $50 for signing it, but it just increased it $100. So now that book's worth 150 as opposed to. So that's I think where it kind of balanced at least the price value of it out.
Mm-hmm.
The grade itself, I still think they do mark it down. They nick it down 1 or 2 grades or half a grade for a signature on it because technically it does degrade that book. That's why I don't think you'll ever see a 10.0 signed book.
Yeah.
Actually, there are a couple of those.
Really?
Yeah. There's some Last Ronin books that came out. Well, 10.0s are really rare in general for anyone listening. 10.0s, I didn't see them in recent circulation until Batman Damned, and haven't seen them until The Last Ronin. But there was a sign and sketch Last Ronin, and it even had like a remark and everything from Kevin Eastman, and it did get a 10.0. And I guess it's one of those things that book probably was easy to get 10.0. Same thing with Batman Damned, because they're thicker books. They have more cardboard. It's harder to bend and mess them up.
Mm-hmm.
Just the format of them themselves probably were easier to grade as a 10.0 than the paper, like a paper cover or the cardstock covers, those I would say would damage it. But even with that, signatures, I primarily have like 9.8 signatures or sketches. And
again, that to me, there's some integrity issue there, because if I have this book here, no matter what I put on it, I'm doing something to deface it, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So it damages it. Like that, I mean, that's the reality of it. It takes away from what the original was. So that means it should get knocked down a little bit. Now, again, the value of the book could be higher because it has somebody important signature on it or a sketch piece. So if you're seeing a 10.0, and 10.0 is supposed to be that industry, like it's in pristine mint condition, and you're telling me that a marker or a pen didn't destroy it? There's some, I don't know. That's where I get a little skeptical on the whole grading in general, because it should, in my opinion,
I can see your point.
Down to a 9.9. Be a 9.9 then. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's so it's weird. But yeah, I'm not a professional grader, so
I totally agree with that. I'm sure I can't think of an example right now, but I have had books where I've gotten, I want to say it was a John Romita remark on it. And when you look at he used a pen first and then went over it with marker, and the pen itself indents the book because it's a pen. No matter how you're going to write on pen, it's going to indent the paper. And then recoloring it with marker, I can totally see your way of thinking of like, hey, you've now damaged the book, because if you did that yourself, it would have been damaged, and it would have gone down a point or something for sure, because you did it. But just because an artist or creator did it, they just don't. It's okay,
right? Because and a good example is one of the books that I submitted was this Mickey Mouse book that I have that I got at Disneyland when I was like 8 years old. I took a crayon, lightly colored in Mickey Mouse's eyes. Well, can't you just say, well, I'm an artist, I colored in his eyes, so that should actually be graded up higher than what it really is?
Yeah,
that's true too.
But I guarantee CBCS is going to mark it down for being damaged.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the weird.
I think it's one of those situations where, like everything else in the collecting community, where the value is what the buyers and fan base make it.
Mm-hmm.
100%. That's what it comes down to, right? Like, realistically, a comic book is literally a mass-produced printed piece of paper with a number on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more than that for the collector. So based on, the whole supply and demand thing, based on how many are in circulation versus the price you give it versus the price they're willing to pay or the value they give it, it's one of those things that like there's no like definitive answer to like making it worth more or less. especially if someone marks it. You know, for example, I met Kevin Eastman and he signed my book and he drew a little turtle on it. And, you know, yeah, it was great. And it's one of those things, like for me, I was like losing my shit. I was like, oh my God,
Right.
Kevin Eastman just drew a turtle in my book, and, you know, and he said he said for Brandon, and then like from Kevin Eastman, he signed it, and he did a special note for me. Now, if I tried selling that book to you, you'd forever be holding a book that would say for Brandon instead of, you know, for Frank or whoever's name. Yeah. And then you go, okay, did I really want to spend $100 on this, or because it says Brandon, I should spend $60 on it? But then if I try to sell it to another person, or I sell it to Brandon, then it doesn't make a difference because that's his name as well, right? So maybe he'd even pay double what I think I paid like $5 for that. I don't even remember. I think I just
cool with that.
Like I don't even think he charged me, honestly. So like, you know, for Brandon, if he wanted that book, he could pay double if I told him to just pay double for it, because it has his name on it. It's a special book that has a special note of being to you, your given name.
Well, I think you make a good point in the realm of artistic discretion in general, because what it reminds me of is, okay, let's look at the art world. Vincent van Gogh, for example. Van Gogh probably wouldn't even be recognized today as one of the most famous artists out there, at least in a classical sense that we know of, if he didn't have a story to be told. Like you getting it signed by Kevin Eastman, your name Brandon on it. Well, if you pass that story along to the next buyer, it's going to bring and raise that value more of that book if the story keeps on going. Because Van Gogh, for example, the only reason why we know who he is because he wrote so many letters to his brother. And in those letters, divulged his life and who he was as a person, really, and showed a lot of kind of instability and other elements about who he was. And so people found out who his artwork was, plus his brother, who, funny enough, Van Gogh sold one painting in his entire life when he was alive, and it's because his brother, who was an art dealer, sold it to some dude. But we know him as the dude that cut his ear off because of a girl. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. But because of that story, we romanticize it. We're able to embellish it more. We can go back and find all the letters he wrote to his brother, read those letters, get to know this artist more, have more intimate detail about it. Now we're going to go buy his sunflower painting for $20 million and hang it in the museum.
There you
Same
go.
thing with the Kevin Eastman signature. You know, if you have that story along with it, it's signed to Brandon, but even somebody by the name of Ted will pay double for it if you tell the story and market it well enough so that they can then pass it on to the next person and so on. And that's kind of, I think, what the art world in general kind of ties in, and signatures and that kind of cool.
That's interesting.
Because
that goes two ways. Like certain personalizations, like I will avoid a book if it has someone else's name in it. Like if it's personalized at all, I avoid it. In fact, Adam West was like infamous for always personalizing stuff. You could never just get an Adam West signature. He's going to say, who's it for? And put a name on it. And I had
the time of date, longitude, latitude.
Dude.
You'll know exactly when I signed this.
He was very strict on that, to the point that I had a friend who's like really big on getting signatures and all this stuff. He's the one who got me into this whole like theatric thing about like hunting down books and getting books signed. But he would slip like a piece of plastic under it. And Adam West at that age was just so old and didn't really notice. And so he'd personalize it, but be on the plastic, and his signature would land on the book. And that's how he would able to just get the single Adam West signature, just by like tricking Adam West.
And you know what's funny about that on a collector's element is, wouldn't you think that it being personalized would make it more rare? Because this is a rare Adam West signature to John Franklin, you know, and that's the only one of its kind. So then, you know what I mean? So it's a weird, like, it's a buyer's market. It's who's going to pay for what?
If you get it graded, CGC would be like, oh, well, you wrote in permanent marker, So even though it's worth this much to you, we're gonna downgrade it because not only is it like damaged by the marker, it's also got someone's name on it, right?
Yeah.
Well,
So it gets all weird.
Well, okay, so CGC, the whole thing about getting signature grading on it is that you have to have a witness. So, and that's what I'm also wondering about your Mickey Mouse book is that if you don't have a witness and you get a book graded and it already has a signature on it and it didn't go through the proper, having someone there to see it and to sign off on it, they saw it, get signed by this person at this time and date, then they'll give you, I think it's what, the green label, basically. Yeah, it's like it's been tampered with basically, and so you get a
or it's like an uncertified signature or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of the same thing if you try to, the coloring the eyes, like fixing up the coloring or adding a new staple into a book. That's tampering. You're gonna get a different color labeled for that, and that's another whole different playground. It's like, well, do I want to get books signed, and do I mind getting this different color label, or do I want my yellow label from the official signature saying that it's official, that it was witnessed and all that. So that's another little battleground because if you don't have the yellow label and you have the signature, that value just drops.
Yeah, because you could have just signed it yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the hard thing too, is I don't know if any of the companies have like legitimate signature authentication type people. Like I know in certain like baseball cards, for example, there are people that can to identify a real Mickey Mouse signature.
Yeah.
And so they can or Babe Ruth signature. They have people that do that. So I don't think we're there yet in a comic world because if CBCS or CGC or one of these companies can actually get people in and say, hey, we can authenticate these signatures based on, certain elements, then it could make it a little bit more trustworthy. And that's why they can't, because they don't have anybody that can actually verify it unless they see it in person. To say, hey, this
I don't see why
authentic,
not.
like Jim Lee signature.
What if you took a picture with the person signing your book?
No,
See, I think that's definitely a thing that could be done. Like if you got a video or photo of it, submit it. You might. But here's the thing: my experience. So getting into my experience with these companies, once you get through the loops with a bunch of stuff, you can actually start talking to certain people in charge. And once you get to that platform, you can pretty much then kind of have certain things done for you within reason. I mean, obviously nothing like that's going to be violate their integrity as a company, but you can get things done quicker. So for me, for example, after I decided to go finally with CBCS to get all my books graded and go with them for a variety of reasons, I've had a horrendous time getting certain things done. And even being able to get my book shipped to them. Partly on my fault. I'll take some credit on that because I'm very structured the way I like to get things done. But when my books finally got out there, it was a whole other issue. And finally, I got in contact with, I'm going to butcher his last name, but the owner of CBCS, Steve Borrock. I think it's how you pronounce it.
Something like that. Yeah, we butcher names all the time. Don't even worry. It's okay. It's a common thing on the show.
Right. And he emailed me back pretty quick within a day or so, and was like, apologized for a lot of the stuff. Told me straight up, like, hey, I'm going to take over your account firsthand. And so which made me feel, okay, cool. They've got my stuff under
valued as a customer. Yeah.
Right. Even though it's still been sitting in the status of processing since June 5th. So it's still taking a lot of time. But I'm still okay with it. I know for sure they have my books now. I feel like they're in good care. They're doing what they need to do. But now that I have that open dialogue with Steve, I do feel like if I wanted to, I could email him right now and be like, hey, I got this book. It's signed by Jim Lee. I got a photo of me and Jim Lee. What can you do to get it for the authentication? And if they can, I guarantee they would probably like, yeah, that's proof enough. We see that. This is the book. And, they'd probably be able to do it.
And I think they would be way more flexible than CGC. I think CGC would just straight up, doesn't matter. I've only taken pictures of books of people signing it when I'm like, I know I'm not going to get this graded and I need to get this photo in case I need to sell it for whatever reason. And it's proof to the customer I'm selling it to that I got it signed. Like I met, oh my gosh, I'm spacing out the name. The dude from Jaws. I got his signature on a Jaws Mondo poster, and I made sure to get that photo when I got it signed, because it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, I sell a lot of signed things, but it gives you credibility too at that same
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that credibility is good enough for almost every person I've ever had to sell a signature to. So why isn't it good enough for CGC or any of the, some stuff like that?
Maybe they're just overly paranoid. People going to Photoshop themselves with famous people in pictures. I don't know. Like,
oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's a real fact. But I think it's even simpler than that. People just forging signatures.
yeah.
That's why they don't do it in the first place, because it's like, how many books do they get in saying, "Oh, this is signed by X, XYZ," and they're looking at it like this is like complete forgery. There's no way we can prove it's not a forgery. And until they can battle that, they're just like, we're going to take the liability out of it and not even touch it. That.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. I mean, I wouldn't want to, have a company and put my name on something and suddenly, we go and grade a ton of books and then find out 10 years later these are actually all forged signatures.
Yeah.
How does that make me look as a company? So I think that's kind of in their defense.
Yeah, that makes
why
sense
they do
too.
So what we're, deciding between CGC and CBCS is like a huge debate within the community. And even more people, like once people mention PGX, they just put them in the corner, just like, shh, be quiet. And then,
dude, real quick with PGX. So I actually had a couple of DMs, one of which was funny as heck, because they were like, wait, you're thinking about going to PGX? Why? You want to get them to grade it and crack the slab and then actually send it to CGC? Because you can get it or sell it. You know what I mean? It's pretty much just getting a graded service for nothing. And it's like, it's kind of sad because they are not looked upon very. And you know what? I don't diss PGX. Like, use them. Go out and get it graded, dude. If you want your book graded and want it for inexpensive and something for, use them. Like, it's still a good company. Like, they're not gonna. But for me, I think you were getting to the question like why I chose CBCS as opposed to everyone.
Yeah.
After a long debate of which way do I go, I think what it came down to was like the knowledge of starting a comic book shop and the knowledge of where I was going to be going with grading, because I was going to be essentially tied into the books that I send now to one company. I'm very brand loyal. So whatever brand's going to give me that service that I feel is going to be great, number one, is going to get my money. Now, CBCS still failed me on a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not putting them on this high pedestal. I did choose them. I think I'm going to go with them, at least for now, for the next, few years. But I had to pick one because I don't want to be going through these different, services. But I felt overall, as a customer support, they ended up getting back to me quicker. They helped me out quicker. There's elements to them that I was looking into when, basketball and football cards and all that kind of stuff back in the day. Knowing the Beckett situation, how CBCS and Beckett have now merged together, and their Intensify is going to bring up their standings, in my opinion, on the grading world. At the same time, I grade for my own personal use, but I also grade for business use as well. And there's been a few people in the comic community that helped me and navigated me. Ryan the comic guy you talked about, he was one that, we talked a little bit. There's
super great
gentleman.
Guy.
He is.
Anyone listening, check out his account, Ryan Comic Guys. I've bought comics from him. I've spoken to him. You've spoken to him as well. And just, I was like, he's in finance too. And I even told my girlfriend who's in finance, I was like, you got to follow this guy. He's posting some cool stuff right now. And she's always learning stuff from him too. So yeah, super cool guy.
So, and then, the man, oh man, I'm going to butcher his name. The man with the red hood, I think it was.
Oh yeah.
I think so. He does a lot of graded comics as well. Once Worthy as well. And also City Limit Comics, who destroy CGC all the time.
Yeah.
He kind of got me into like the whole CBCS idea as well. And with CBCS, I just felt like they're a place I can go for inexpensive grading, at least for my own personal collection, for the ones that I just want to have slapped on my wall.
Mhm.
They're also a good company, in my opinion, for ones that I do want to sell and make a profit on
Mhm.
going forward as well. And I just think they're going to be a company that's to be contended with CGC now. CGC is so overbooked. Like, you're not going to get a book back from them for like 6 months to a year
Gosh.
in
Yeah.
some cases.
Is there?
You know, so it's like,
Sorry, it just got me
What's that?
thinking real quick, and I'm pretty sure both of you might be able to answer this pretty fast. Because is there certain anxiety to just sending a book out? Like,
whoa,
Oh yeah.
100%.
yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about it, like being that guy. Like, oh, I got Batman #1. I'm gonna go get this graded. Like, let me just casually put this in a box and send it across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna like swap between so many hands in the like at the post office, and then when it gets to CGC or wherever, and it's like there has to be like some like degree of anxiety there and a level of like insurance that has you covered, right? Like,
Oh, dude, I'm so I don't know if Brandon told you, Brandon, that my first shipment out, because this is taking me about a year or so to finally get done and handled. I have 200 books that I sent out.
Mm-hmm.
That was 5 boxes of the smaller USPS boxes
mhm.
stuffed with book, and I would say for sure 50 of those at least were for my personal collection that I'm still like, they say they have them in their care. It's finally there, but I'm still thinking about it constantly.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
are my
Until it
books
gets back
okay?
in your
Like,
hands, like
yeah, like I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, like it's super nerve wracking. And I remember when I first sent it out to them, and I was in email contact with one gentleman that I was working with, and he handled my account. And I'm looking at the tracking number. I'm like, hey, dude, USPS says that it's at your location. Do you have it? He didn't get back to me. 24 hours later, he didn't get back to me. I sent him another message like, dude, can you at least just verify with me you got my books?
mm-hmm.
I'm about to fly
that's
over
when-
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I was like, I'm going to Texas, dude. Let's go. But it wasn't until like Steve got a hold of me, and then the
Mhm.
gentleman I was working with got a hold of me, and like, yeah, we got your books that are in. And then I finally saw them on their website saying processing, and they showed all the books that I had. I went through my checklist, my Excel spreadsheet that I had,
Mhm.
and it was all correct. So every single book that I submitted was there. It's on their site, and that's when I was like, okay, but still, I don't know if there's an intern walking around with a cup of coffee that's already spilled and destroyed
Mhm.
20 of my books.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
Holy shit.
not,
Yeah.
not talking shit on interns or anything, but that's
You're the one who doesn't get the blame, man. Yeah.
right.
Dude, I get it though. It's just like anything could happen. The whole building could collapse for some reason.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
Well, I think my first Comic-Con, I went around and I wanted to get like a Batman Grail, basically. So I got a Dark Knight 3 blank cover, and I went around to
Nice.
as many Batman artists and writers during the convention to get their signatures on from everybody, from Chris Burnham to Neil Adams to like and the one I couldn't get that I thought would just complete that book was Frank Miller. And I know that, if you go to Comic Sketch Art, they could help you get, signatures and everything. So I was just like, hey, this is my CGC form. It's all been authenticated and all that type of stuff. And I just need to get Frank Miller. And I signed the paperwork. I filled out a new form so they could get Frank Miller on it and then send it to CGC and send it back to me once it's graded. And I have maybe like 20 names on that book. I'll show it to you on Instagram. I'll post it up with this episode and whatnot. It's one of my first
cool.
graded books. And dude, I didn't get that book back for almost over a year, basically.
oh hell no.
And every time I reached out to the dude that runs Comic Sketch Art, he's just like, yeah, we have it. It should be with Frank in Washington. You know what? A few months later go by, and then I'm like, hey, I'm just wondering the status of my book, man. How's it going? And he's just like, Frank has a signing in Mexico. We'll get it done then. And then I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like I said, I gave this to you in San Diego, and you've given me two different like spots. I finally got it back. It was a 9.8, miraculously, dude. I have no idea how that book survived that whole convention, got all the signatures
Right.
and all that stuff, and traveled. But that anxiety I had the entire time of just like, am I going to lose this book? Like, and some of the money I invested in it just to get some signatures and all that type of stuff. It's like, it is nerve wracking. So a shipment that big, I could just imagine. I've never spent more than 20
I'm
books.
seriously like, and I know I'm not the only one that's ever done like a big 200 book submission. I'm sure there's probably people all the time doing it. But for me, being the first and having like 200 of my book, some of those I'm expecting to get back to actually make a profit, to help my business, to grow, to continue pushing. And if something happens to that, I'm out a lot of money. I'm out a lot of time, and then not to get morbid, but I think about some of that too is like, I don't know, what if I died of a heart attack tomorrow and those books are just sitting in limbo? And then what? Like, do I need to like have like some kind of weird like will and special trust or something set up for when I submit it because it takes so long to get back to you? Like,
there's no like form for a beneficiary, like for your
which is strange. You know what? There should be. There honestly should be. Like, dude, if something happens to the owner, they'll get sent to this person. Or whatever.
We should be the first ones on record to like recommend that, dude. Like,
right?
It's like that emergency contact.
How many books are sitting at CBCS or CGC that they couldn't return because the owner is now deceased because it took them too long to get those books? I guarantee there's a pile of them.
A year after COVID, you can only imagine. There has to be instances in this case,
Yeah.
And the way
CBC
is pushing out signings every single day, like there has to be something that just has happened. And that's a good question. I'm curious about this. So if anyone has the answer, please let us know. And I'll try to ask some people too. It's a crazy journey. And, even if you do choose like PGX, or if you are a massive CGCer and you go with CBCS, like, one thing we did talk about was just like, are you going to spend more money just to have a nicer label for a book that's really just about sentimental value? And are you going to spend more money to just get it encased when you could save more and actually do more with that money? In a business perspective, I think you made a brilliant move. There's no reason with the way CGC's turnaround times are, the way their customer service has been. And, I'm hearing crazy stories. I think you sent me a video about a guy sending in a Last Ronin 1 and it was a TMNT book and he got back a Last Ronin 1 and he's like, I didn't send this book in. That's
how crazy is that? Like,
that's terrifying. Like,
and you know what that makes? And again, I don't want to like tear apart CGC, but what that means is their people are overworked and understaffed.
Yes,
that's really the cause. And I know they're hiring more people, and I know they're trying to, but it's like a little too late. You know what I mean? Like, talk about anxiety. If I get my 200 books back and they're all different books, I'm gonna lose my shit.
Or rotated or stuff like that.
It was like a niche.
I'm expecting at least a 10% error. You know what I mean? I have it already built in. Like I'm not gonna be okay with it, and I will get it fixed. But I'm expecting 10% of my books somehow to be screwed up. It's just that 10% ratio error or something, because I don't trust. Now, if I get them back and none of them are screwed up, I'll praise CBCS all day long. Yeah, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, like to back up what you guys are saying, it's like it was a niche market, right? Like it's kind of like this, like it's that iceberg effect. I feel like with comic books, if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The little bit on top and giant underneath.
Like there's more to it as you get deeper.
Yeah.
Like that's how it is with comic books. You got the people that like casually know about them and then read them, and then you got people that collect, and then you got people that are all about grading. And like for a while, that was a niche community, just like how the comic book community is very niche, especially when it comes to independent comics or like zines. Superheroes are one thing and then everything else. But like, there's this whole, I remember reading some articles about like when the pandemic started, people were just at home and they were just like wanting to spend money and just got into collecting. And they were like, hey, I got all this crap lying around. I'm going to go get some value out of it, And it's just kind of like skyrocketed. And with the internet, of course, just people talking about it in communities. And I'm pretty sure there's hundreds of subreddits about grading too. And
I'm sure.
You know, like
No, I mean the internet's
blew up.
definitely blown it up more and more, and obviously social media and this pandemic actually pushed it out, and so I think more people know about it now.
Mhm.
And it is strange because being around comics like forever, like I've known about the grading world, known about the slab. It's been there, and they're
Mhm.
everywhere, and they've always been cool to see it. Anytime I go into comic book shops, I've always wanted, like as a kid, like looking at all the encased graded comics and like all that cool stuff. But I was like, that was out of my league. You know, I couldn't afford that kind of stuff, at least in my head. But I think, yeah, you're right. I think it's definitely taken a whole new perspective in the community because one, the community has grown now. I think
Mhm.
Marvel is what really pushed the community to where it is now because of what they did with the movies in the last 10
Mhm.
plus years. And it's
Oh, yeah.
really
Totally.
damn this whole, like, if you think about it, some of these people in comics now, like I'm a little older, I know, so it's a little bit different, but I see like these young individuals in their early 20s that grew up like 15 years ago on the first, Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that's part of their life. And now they want to get into the comics and where did it come from? And now it's this whole thing 30 years later. It's grown. And so it's really expanded. And now they're seeing, wow, a lot of the stuff I've been watching on TV, Netflix, that originated in comic books.
Mhm.
Oh,
Like, I was
yeah.
talking to an individual the other day and was talking about Sweet Tooth. And they're like, yeah, it's such a cool show. And I was like, yeah, the comic's really good. He's like, what? Comic? Like that?
What? Oh, no.
Yeah. Same
Oh.
thing with Walking Dead. I remember reading The Walking Dead when it first came out. I was like, this is awesome, blah, 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 blah. And then they came out with a TV show. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. They're going to screw up my comic book because, that whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Dude,
Yeah.
I still
Speak-
loved it, but so many people still don't understand that The Walking Dead started as a comic book.
Yeah.
Speaking of The Walking Dead, when that show came out, that first issue went to like $500.
Yeah.
Quick.
It just everything.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell? Same thing
And-
with Invincible. And I was
I
like,
gave all mine away.
dude, you want to hear painful story real quick? I'm sorry to like get sidetracked, but like, I was in this comic book class at my community college at City College of San Francisco at CCSF. And my professor, he was a guy that collected comics, graded comics, and he literally made a financial career out of he said he has a comic collection specifically to sell to put his child through college. That was like his goal. That's like how big he was into it. He was also in like his 40s, 50s ish, I want to say. So he
Right.
definitely had been doing it for a while. He had easily over 20 copies of the original Ninja Turtles run.
Oh wow.
Whoa.
Like this
that's
dude he saw Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Yeah.
Yeah.
He saw them at a convention when it came out and they were selling the comic and it was like, oh, Ninja Turtles, cool. I'll check this out. And he just knew in the back of his head it was going to blow up. And he sold them for like $80 a pop or something like that originally. But then when the movie came out, it skyrocketed. And he was like, I know he had to have been like kicking himself in the ass because he basically sold all those issues and he had like 20 plus.
I mean, look what they're going for now. It's
Yeah, it's-
insane.
Yeah.
I only had one of the original first printing when I was a kid
Mhm.
that a friend of mine got, but I took it from him.
Oh man. he's gonna hear this. He's gonna be like, that's where it went, damn it.
right? Like nobody said anything. But again, like we were kids and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that was my jam next to G.I. Joe. Like TMNT, like I remember going to
hell yeah.
the movie. Nobody wanted to go with me, so I walked myself down to the movie theater. I think I was like in 4th grade at the time to go see the movie by myself because I was so stoked on it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that comic's like long gone, and I'm like, you don't think of it when you're a kid. You just want to read it. You want to get involved in it and whatever it might have been. And now it's like, yeah, dude, it's crazy how some of these books are.
Well,
But that's the thing now is like, I think this generation is taking it a different look at it to where that's why we're getting people to buy a lot of other things now
mhm.
based on these variants or these new things. And it's kind of cool because it is going to be like only 1 in 100. But even if you're like a 10-year-old kid buying that, I think you got parents and people that are showing like, get it graded, take care of it,
Mhm.
look at it, so it's preserving it a little bit more
Yeah.
so than anything else.
That's another big thing is like how much it's all changed over the years. You know what I mean? Like these books, the guy that got me into comic book grading and got me into conventions and all that. He bought his house with 4 copies of Amazing Fantasy 15. Like that's how he got his home, you know, and that's always been like, dude, goals. And he has a day job, but his whole thing is going to conventions and getting signatures and doing all this stuff. And he has the most amazing collection I've ever seen in my life. He has a Killing Joke signed by Alan Moore, which Alan Moore will not sign in this.
Woo!
Cool.
Damn, right. That's crazy to hear.
Yeah, he was the ultimate connection I've ever made, and he's a great friend and always helped me. But it's just like, it's one of those things. It's like you could do it and chase the money, which is a total pro. I mean, it's comic book grading. They've saved me in a lot of instances, and they've gotten me out of, some, when things went south. Luckily, I was able to sell some books, and they got me out of a situation or held me over. And then there's the preservation aspect of it. Like, there's so many pros to it. Like, it's almost not even. It's hard to say no to. It's just like collecting books in general. It's hard to like push it aside when it's like there's going to be one reason that you're going to have a graded book in your collection eventually,
Yeah.
I think to sum up the idea based on to grade or not to grade, I think ultimately always grade on one level, because though I'm a reader and I want to read my books, I want to have them to be able to read. As we move forward in society, this book right here, well, especially this one, this is a Marvel's one with the acetate plastic covering.
Oh,
it's
I got those too. Yeah, they're awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
They're cool. To eventually get it slabbed and preserve it for posterity, absolutely, I'm all for it, and it should be done. That's, to me, bottom line. Whether it's actually graded like 9.2 or 9.8, that's bottom line irrelevant on some level. True. As long as it gets slabbed and it's preserved and it's taken care of. Moving forward, because everything else is going to be digital eventually. And then what happens when everything digitally is somehow tarnished, when we have like some weird solar flare that wipes out our entire network and then all of our photos are destroyed, well, then we got these things slabbed in plastic bins that we can crack open when we're living in caves again, because we can't, society's come to an end.
That is the most forward thinking I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny you talk about like the whole digital age, because look at NFTs. Like you could have a digital comic NFT. If you did I don't fully understand NFTs, but it's basically having digital ownership of something, right? So like I could see grading somehow creeping its way into there just to get with the times.
That'll be unique. That'll be interesting. And it's crazy. Now CGC grades posters, like just random stuff, like
everything's worth money now.
And if you're going to grade something, it's probably going to be a floppy, it's going to be a single issue. And if you want to continue reading that story, get the bitchin' ass like graphic novels that they're coming out with. Like these deluxe editions, these pristine editions, like all these hardcovers we're getting, they're gorgeous books. Like I'm slowly converting. I was a big omnibus fan. I loved getting omnibuses to have just a bunch all at once, get the full story. And there, I've always had trade paperbacks. I continue to collect hardcovers. I have a whole shelf of them. And I still have some of the single issues for a lot of those series. So
I want to make one note on that of where you're going is I can't do omnibuses and I can rarely do trade paperbacks.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And I think the reason why for me, because obviously like music, like anything else in life, people have a certain way that they enjoy things. I seriously like picking up my single issue copy, getting my cup of coffee, sitting down for 15 to 20 minutes just to zen out with this one thing. And then I'm done. Nice. If I had a trade paperback in my hand or omnibus, I'm going to want to read that entire thing in that one sitting. It's like binge watching a Netflix show, right?
There you go. Yeah, that's an equivalent. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so for me, every day I get a comic and I get my coffee 10, 20, 30 minutes, depending on the size of the cup of coffee and the comic. And I'm done. And I get my feel for that day. Now, will I read a second one? Possibly. Maybe another one throughout the day. Yeah. But for the most part, it's got to be starting with that every day. So I can't do the trade paperback. So I'm all about the single issue. I'm 100% single issue. And I want it physical in my hand so I can open and flip through and do that. Like that's how that's my zen. That keeps me sane. That's my thing. So
I respect that so much.
I respect that. And I think you're the first person to honestly tell me you prefer single issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm probably a diamond in the rough or something because
hey, to each their own. Yeah. As long as you're reading comics, it's all good with me. You know what I mean? Like it don't matter. I think that's
why I also started my company because I want to promote that idea of coffee in a comic. Maybe it's tea in a comic, maybe it's water in a comic, whatever it is. It's that idea for me, and that's why every shipment I send out, I do send 1 or 2 cups of free coffee grounds, so you can enjoy the coffee in a comic, with me. I want to promote that lifestyle.
There is no excuse.
I know, I know how it's helped me. I know what it's done for me, and I know where it takes me, and it sets my day in a very positive way when I can wake up, have my coffee, read my 1-issue comic, and start my day that way. And it makes me such a better person overall. And if I can pass that to the next person to do the same thing, dude, I think this world would be amazing.
Dude, that is the greatest. What's it? So like the take a penny, leave a penny, the like the gift giving thing that everyone does, like just trading hands and just like giving to someone else and just making someone else's. Dude, when I got your package and I had that little bout of coffee in there, I got so happy. I got so excited. My girlfriend got excited. Like we treasured it. We waited until we had the time to sit down and enjoy it. It's a cool thing, and you have such a great system. As we wind down the conversation and whatnot too, but like, dude, your whole setup I admire it, and it's cool how all of us
I appreciate that.
Different collectors, different ways of reading, different ways of what appeals to us. That's the cool thing about collecting is that it's your collection, it's your way of doing it.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say I love it. I love it because my blood might as well be coffee at this point. Like you could,
right?
No joke. You could ask Brandon. We're on different time zones, but we'll be like podcasting at 10 p.m. and I'll be like, "Yo, bro, I gotta go make a cup real quick." Like I love it because it is too of like I'm getting a coffee tattoo eventually. I have a comic book one already. It's just those are.
I have one. I don't know if you can see that very well.
Yeah, see.
Oh, genius.
I need to get mine, but it's just like I love it because I love coffee, I love comic books, but it's like creating a artful. What's the word for it? It's almost like an experience, but like an artistic experience. Just reading, there's a certain I don't know how you want to label it, zen or tranquility, peace of mind, however you want to label it. Like when you brew the coffee, I do French press. Because
I do too. That's part of my. Yeah,
it's the way to go. It's the routine, right?
Yeah.
Grind the beans down and everything. But when you boil it and you have everything roasting, and then when you pour the cup and you sit down, and for me, I have one of those like reading things that helps prop the book up, and it's just like it's that whole experience, and it's just like you make the experience as something that's just something that should be cherished. It's a gift
and personal,
right?
Very personal.
It's personal. It's a gift. It's something that other people don't do. In San Francisco, there was one shop that was a coffee shop that sold comics. I remember it was literally called Comics and Coffee. They're
still around, I believe.
Yeah, but it shut down because no one was there. And it's unfortunate because I remember I went there and I bought Spider-Man and Wolverine. That was the comic I got. And it was like 3 issues packed into one. I don't know when Marvel was doing that. But, it was crazy because, I got that nice smell of a coffee shop, when you're roasting beans all day and the whole place smells like that. And then the other end was, all the comics on the wall. And then they had tables there. And it's just like, yo, and they had like lattes named after characters and everything. It was great.
That's dope.
That's actually like one of my goals by the end of the year is to get my own actual storefront itself. And part of it, I don't want to be known as a coffee shop, but I am going to serve coffee. And I'm going to have tables set up, and it's going to be set up to where you can get a cup of coffee and read a comic, but it's going to be mainly a comic book shop as well. But my end all goal eventually is to get that hooked up because, again, it's something I want to do. This is the life that I want, and that's the goal I have. So that way I can get people like you guys to come to OC, and when you're in town, to stop in and hang out. Dude, I coffee and read some comics.
Yes.
I'm all for it. Sign me up for whatever newsletter I got to do to make this happen. Like I love it.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Again, it's just, I can't express enough. Like, I love the idea of making like this ritual of experiencing a comic book with a cup of coffee, and just, I like the whole idea.
Yeah. No, honestly, it's funny, and that's the first thing that connected with me is that's my morning routine. I wake up I wake up early every day just to read, and like it might be a book, it might be a comic, anything, but I need to read my first hour of the day. And as a writer, you always have 5 different reading things in your backpack, no matter what, for any occasion, and it's very, it's a cherished thing. Coffee and comics are it's the perfect pair. You can't.
To me, it is. It's amazing. And don't get me wrong, I got my nighttime reading, which is my novels, my nonfictions, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But in the morning, it's got to be my comic. That's what I start with.
I had one random grading question, actually. I just didn't know when to fit it in.
Go. Fit it in now. Perfect timing.
Yeah. Before I forget, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have had this, but have you ever bought a book that was graded, or you went to get a book graded and then you read it and you're like, man, this thing sucks? Like, I got like I think DC had like a digital version of Batman, literally Detective 27, or they reprinted it because they always do.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember checking it out on their website or something. I forget when, but they had it there, the whole issue, and I read it and I was like, nothing against Bill Finger or Bob Kane, but man, this thing sucked to read. And then you look at like a graded book, and maybe a 7 gets like over $1 million,
It's one of those things. Now, it's like, I guess it varies on the biggest like moments and the significance. It's like an art piece, you know what I mean? The significance and moments that went into that art piece is going to help determine the value and stuff like that. But definitely I've had few books where I've just like, I don't really care about the story, but this cover's bitching, so I want to encapsulate it because I want this cover art like to be showing and whatnot.
So you make a great point on that, Brandon, and I want to piggyback on that a little with number one, the cover art. So one, I'll never have anything graded in my personal collection that I personally haven't read. Now, I'm not saying that I enjoyed the actual story per se, if the cover art is magnificent.
Yes.
And there's a couple books. So that's one aspect of it. But again, going into the idea that everything I've read, and that's probably going to be in my collection. I'm not going to buy a book just because this is $1 million book and I'm going to, pay, because it has no significant interest to me in that. Now, that could be the rarity of it. Like, do I want an Actions comic first appearance of Superman? That would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the rarity of it. But I'm not a Superman fan. I don't like Superman personally. I'm not a giant fan of his. I think the most in the Superman world that I like was actually the original movies in the 80s. That's
nice.
Where but so that's some of it. But going into the art element too, it's so subjective for everybody. One story you might think is horrible, somebody else might love. And I get into that battle all the time. It's like, I'm not a fan of Picasso, for example. I think his Harley Quinn he did in a couple pieces I can respect and I like, but I'm not a fan of a lot of Picasso's work because I'm just not into abstract as much. But Impressionism, Van Gogh's my favorite artist. And I love his stuff. Now, somebody else would argue with me, well, Van Gogh's work sucks, but Picasso's is amazing. That's subjective. And that's what the beauty of art is and what it is you want. So when you're getting into something graded, I would recommend anybody collect what you love.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
If it's the art of the cover itself and that's all you care and the story sucks, but you love the art, so be it. Like, I mean, you
still love half of that book. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's still a 50% ratio there. Yeah. 100%. And I think that's the biggest problem right now with comic book and comic book buying and collecting is that
They don't
people
read it for
aren't
the story.
they don't read it for the story, and they're not collecting what they love. They're collecting what's trending, because there's a spectating announcement for a casting for this person might show up. Mephisto was fucking everywhere, guys, and I could care less about that character. I'm not like a big
That first
fan.
appearance is going to go for a nice price, though.
Yeah, or White Vision. White Vision was trending super hard, and that book was flying. Now look at it. No one cares anymore. Just
Yeah,
don't
it was
follow
the flavor of the
trends.
week.
Yeah, don't follow the trends. Follow what you want and
Yeah.
make a goal for yourself to get books, because they will fluctuate.
I mean, that's a good point. Make a goal for the books you want, but I will go back and actually disagree with you on the trends. I'm all about them. And here's why. They continue to push the market, which keeps
True.
artists and writers in business, which keeps them writing and creating and making this community continue to grow.
Mhm.
Those that do follow the trends, typically, they'll be out in 10 years, 4 years, 5 years. They'll be gone. We'll have a new group of people that will trend it. And that's just kind of how the beast works itself out.
Yeah.
So I'm all about it. Like, you want to push a Moon Knight $1 to $2.5 billion, do it. Whatever. I'm not paying for it.
That's true. We'll just keep on getting more Moon Knight and more Moon Knight.
He's like, I got 5 in the back. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's all right. As long as the integrity stays with the actual distribution and the creators, in the sense that we don't turn into what the baseball market was back in the 80s, when they were just printing out copies of so-called one print cards, and they were just essentially printing money. There's a whole awesome documentary about that on Netflix that blew my mind because they screwed up because they continued to print these things and they made it seem like that, there's only 100 Jose Canseco cards out there when in reality they have 50,000 in the back room.
Yeah.
And they kept printing them out. So as long as the integrity stays with the companies and we keep watch on the print counts and all that kind of stuff, then so be it. Whatever the market wants to do and the trends, wherever they want to take it, let them collect.
Get those
It's
second print, third print, fourth print.
Yeah, and that's how pop culture works. It's just whatever's trending is going to push the market, and then it allows people within that market to continue to strive to keep it basically, continuous or to keep it relevant.
Yeah.
So those that actually do love it can continue to read, create, make, and be a part of it.
True.
I agree.
Berserker, perfect example. I mean, that was the biggest trending book, and I'm sure we're going to get so much more out of that series because of how many first issues that book sold. And then they have the foil variants and all that type of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It's like, just buy what you like, collect what you enjoy. Maybe it was just me. DC Universe. That's where I read it because it's on there. Duh. Sorry, I was like, where did I read? Because I was like, I know they make it easy to read, but it was on DC Universe. When they start adding more comics to it, because I had to pay a whole year. But I remember, I'll just say, everybody, if you're looking to collect graded books, just maybe read the story first if you want to get interested, or maybe just check out like a summary because it's on there. Detective Comics 27. I'd probably pay over $1 million, but I don't know if the story is worth $1 million. Nothing against, nothing against it. Bill Finger and Bob Kane are great creators in their own ways. It's very 1930s.
And I agree. And the funny thing on my last point, when it comes to graded and what you love, I don't understand why like a Punisher Warzone #1 9.8 isn't going for $1 million. That's my personal thing. I think the storyline's amazing. The book with the die cut out of it is awesome.
Yeah.
The whole element of that book, the color, the artwork, that's $1 million book to me, but it's not. I think you can pick up a 9.8 for like $150. So why is something like the Batman one going? And that's the weird thing. So again, subjective. Like that's
it kind of comes back to everything we talked about. It's what you make it. It's what the value the community makes it, and it's what the value of the grading company gives it.
True. Well, this has been a very enlightening conversation. I'm so glad we got to get you on the show, dude. We've been talking about it for months, and this was so much more. We got to get you back. There's so much more I'd love to talk to you about with characters and comics. And
I had a blast.
Yeah,
I definitely had a blast.
Good time, guys.
Well,
I appreciate it.
We should have a full Punisher episode at some point and just talk about the character.
That would be amazing.
So down for that. Maybe just do a movie like comparison. We'll do something, but we'll get you involved again.
Get a movie commentary going or something.
Yeah,
that'd be brilliant.
where can they find your stuff? Where can people buy your merchandise and support your show?
Essentially, my big element is follow my Instagram, coffee underscore and underscore a underscore comic. So coffee and a comic, just search coffee and a comic essentially. Google, whatever, or coffeeandacomic, all one word.com is where merch.
Found you already.
Also, there you go. Start a pull list with me. I get all new books in. I do pretty good deals typically. Like the current deal I have going on, there's a new book about to be released. If you guys know Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones, Mother of Dragons, well, she just launched a new comic herself called Mother of Madness. That's dropping next month. And so I'm doing a special promo for the next week and a couple weeks after, around 35% off on that book if you pre-order with me right now online. But yeah, I always try to do what I can to give back as much as I can, as well as try to stay in business and not go bankrupt. But yeah, so coffeeandacomic.com or just Google coffee and a comic, but make sure it's coffee and a comic because there's a lot of coffee and comics and all that tied in. But mine's just coffee and a comic.
And we'll add all your links in the very bottom so people can support you. Dude, I am just so happy we got to finally talk and hang out a little bit longer.
It's been amazing.
You guys could see.
I just signed up literally right now. Nice. So within a span of 10 seconds, you can easily sign up, everybody. I just did it.
You guys could check out like the preview episode that led into this whole conversation on Coffee and a Comics Instagram. It's like an hour-long Instagram video that you and me ended up doing. It meant to be 20 minutes, and we just kept on going. It was a great content.
Right, we just kept on going.
And thank you so much, dude. We'll see you again soon. And guys, thanks for hanging.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon and Brandon. I appreciate you having me on there.
Of course. Thank you for being here.